All right, here we go. Well, good morning, everyone. The Livonia Chamber of Commerce welcomes you to our webinar today that dives into an important skill set for managers to develop so they can get the most out of their work teams. Our program today is titled How to Mentor Young Professionals in a Dynamic and Diverse Workforce. And we are thankful to Schoolcraft College for presenting this program for us today. We're grateful to welcome back Dr. Lee Meadows, who I find to be one of the most engaging, wise, and a great guy. And he's one of the best human resources management consultants that I've gotten to know. And I'm glad he's back with us again today. Lee, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Dan. It's good to be here.
So he's a guy who helps us understand the concepts that will help us improve our management skills today. In recent years, average employee turnover rates have climbed from 12 to 19% annually in the United States. Fueled by pre-COVID low unemployment rates, it was common for employers to pluck talent from competitors to fill openings. As a matter of fact, the Livonia Chamber had a member quit this year because this happened to them by a competing chamber member. As the economy rebounds, these trends are expected to continue unless managers try more engaging tactics with their teams. Organizations with higher staff turnover will continue to see challenges with productivity and profits. Here are a few other key statistics from an article written earlier this year for bulletin.com. Laura from our team will distribute this piece to everybody after the webinar, but here are a couple highlights. Companies with low employee turnover will bring in, on average, 4 times higher profits. On average, it takes a new hire 1 to 2 years to become fully productive in that role. 69% of disengaged employees will leave for little or no pay raise to work elsewhere. 56% of employees rank culture as more important than salary. Significant reductions in employee turnover can occur when managers effectively provide employee feedback, appreciation, empathy, and engagement that builds an inclusive culture. At first, one may assume it takes too much time to connect with your staffers like this, but it is more gratifying to spend the time like this than it is on the grinding tasks of constantly looking at resumes, making hiring decisions, and retraining new staff. Now we are seeing tangible economic benefits to managing in an inclusive manner. Diversity is a reality, but inclusion is a choice, and the ability to lead inclusively is critical to driving effective leadership. Our speaker today will help us understand how leadership isn't having all the answers for everything, but it's about inspiring people by connecting with them. This is a vital skill for maintaining your young talent and minimizing the hassles of employee turnover. Our speaker today is Dr. Lee Meadows. He's a college professor, professional speaker, and consultant with more than 30 years of experience with expertise in career change, labor relations, leadership development, management consulting and development, also performance management and team building. He has worked with consulting and corporate managements at A.T. Kearney, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, General Motors, Conway Transportation, and also more recently OHM Advisors here in Livonia. He shares his expertise in columns published in newspapers such as the Michigan Chronicle, the Ann Arbor Business Review, Detroit News, Oakland Business Review. He's also a great follow on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you need those handles, feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure Lee will make it available to him as well. Yeah. He holds a bachelor's degree in telecommunications, a master's degree in counseling, and a Ph.D. in higher education for Michigan State University. Here's one of my favorite things to say about Lee. He's an MSU grad who's lived for a long time in Ann Arbor. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Lee Meadows. Lee, great to have you.
And thanks for being here. Let me okay, we are good to go. So Dan, thank you so much for the opportunity to come back and spend some time with my good friends at the Livonia Chamber of Commerce. I always have a good time with this, and I'm really looking forward to spending some time talking with you about this particular topic. It's an endearing topic to me because as I've watched as I've kind of watched changes over the years, one of the things that continues to fascinate me is just how young and talented and skilled our workforce tends to get with every generation. And each generation has their own set of issues, but there are issues that oftentimes get worked out, not just in the external environment, but in the workplace. And now that we find that we are on essentially the almost the tail end of millennials and the roles of leadership and positions of leadership and all that. And so let's spend some time talking about who they are. I'm really excited about them. Now, one of the things that I decided to do was when in doing research around generations, one of the things that researchers love to do is they love to break things down by cohorts. Let's say, we look at a cohort from say 18 to 24 and look at, some of their engaging issues, or a workforce from 24 to 35. And while all that's helpful, it's not specific in the manner that I wanted to talk about today. So with the help of one of my mentees, Marlene Johnson, what we did was that we're going to identify our own specific group of folks. And then this group is going to help us understand what's going on. So here's what I did. I went and looked at the number of individuals who were born in the year 1990. Now that's an important number, and I'll start to show some things about that in just a few minutes. But in 1990, there were over 4 million individuals born within the country. They are the most diverse generation of individuals born in the country. Now, allowing for a variety of different variables, and for you statisticians out there, don't focus on this part. I'm just taking a conservative guess, and I'm going to say that on the conservative end, at least 3.5 million turned 18 years of age in the year 2008. I can't say how many, but give me the room to guess like that. And when they became 18, they were legally old enough to seek full-time employment, to go to college, to vote, and to join the military. And that particular picture you see in front of you, that's that group of individuals who were born in the year 1990. All right, that's their background. Now let's follow their history over time. So by the time they turned 18, near 2008, these are just some highlights. During that time, they experienced the stock market crash. All right, they experienced the housing collapse. They experienced the big bailout, and Obama was elected in his first term. 4 years later, at the age of 22, what are some of the things that they experienced at that time? Well, major climate storms were going on in 2012. Sandy Hook and other related events were also going on. Did you know that the GIF, the thing that we use now in terms of graphics, turned 25, right? Turned 25 during that time, and Obama was reelected. At age 26 in 2016, some interesting highlights: the Orlando nightclub shooting and related things like that happened, the Russian hacking. We saw the beginning of the opioid crisis, and then in 2016, President Trump was elected. Now we move over to 2020, where we are right now. All right, where's this group right now? They are, like all of us, they are in the midst of COVID-19. Virtualization and digital expansion is just a common part of their landscape. They already know a lot about this. There's also autonomous driving. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, look at that age. That group is now 30 years of age. They've been turning 30 years of age all year. And if social scientists and sociology and folks who do adult development and all that, if what they say is true, every decade is a transition year for us. So that means these folks are turning 30 at a time of transition in their lives. Now, for those of you who are 31 and older, you know what that meant. That meant that when we turned 30, for instance, when we turned 30, folks, me and Dan, we had to give up being Donnie and Clyde robbing 7-Elevens in somewhere in the Southwest. You turn 30, you recognize that there's certain things you have to give up in order to make room for the things that are about to unfold. And 30 is such a transitional year for all of us, because we make decisions about what it is that we're going to give up, where we're going to focus, how we're going to direct our lives, and all that. So this group, this millions of folks, have now turned 30, and I think that makes them both pumped, primed, and positioned for mentoring to occur inside of the organization. Now I'm going to use them as my hallmark for moving for the rest of this presentation. So I want you to keep those kinds of things in mind, because again, we refer to them as the resilient generation. That means, I mean, look at what they've been looking at. The COVID-19 pandemic. Dan and I were just having a laugh about the fact that as we do this on November 13th, the last time Friday the 13th occurred was March 13th of this year. And boy, you talk about things been spinning out of control ever since. Look at the economic disruption that they've had to experience, either in college or outside college or in the workplace, the social protests that have emerged from that, the real sharp political divisions that we see going on in our society right now, where that gap starts to widen, the mounting job losses, but the mounting job losses in the face of the fact that a number of organizations are also in a hiring mode. One of the pieces of information that Dan shared with you earlier is that whole notion of plucking individuals from different organizations now. Well, as these organizations attempt to fill positions, they're competing with one another for the talent that's out there. And then, of course, for a number of folks, their dreams have been delayed, not vanished, but delayed. The things that a number of us thought about at age 22, 23, getting out of college, a lot of these folks have had to delay those for a variety of different reasons. But they're extremely resilient. Now, here's some other things you need to know about them. They are the most divergent generational workforce ever, bar none. You can go all the way back to Aristotle, Plato, everybody who was around at that time. No workforce has been more diverse than this workforce, and that's the dynamic that Dan talked about in his early presentation. That's a dynamic that we've never seen before, but is not going to go away. So it has to be addressed. They use social media to share their world with the world, friends and family. Everything is done by way of social media. That's how they communicate in general. They are a group they're a collaboration generation. They are what was known as a sixth sense technology generation. When I was learning how to program a VCR, in my mind, that was the most incredible piece of programming effort. I was always tired every time I did it. I didn't have any sixth sense about this. This group grew up with technology. To them, you show them something, they look at it for a couple of seconds, go, oh, this is how it's supposed to work. But in the same vein, they are the most stressed out generation that we've ever seen. In 2021, 70% of the workforce will be millennials. Are you ready for that? That's just a couple of months away. In fact, I would even make the argument that it's already in place. 70% of the workforce will be millennials. In other words, they fill this category. And one of the concerns that we have about them as a group is that their primary motivator is fear. The fear of not being good enough. The fear of, if we don't do something, what's going to happen down the line? And one of the things that we as leaders inside of organizations have to know how to do is how to help them manage that fear so it's much more productive. So this is who they are. And look how their world was shaped. When they went to school, school was never a safe haven. Terrorism and war is kind of embedded into their psyche. They did experience the Great Recession. They're also the group that knows 24/7 everything. Nothing ever shuts down. There's no screen that shows up on television at 1 o'clock in the morning where it's just this weird sound beeping and forcing folks to go to bed. This is what they know. And they're online everything. If you're going to really watch this thing unfold, as we go into the holiday season, this thing is going to explode like nobody's business. They are immersed in social technology. That's how they communicate. And how about this? They do not remember a time when the internet did not exist. The internet is to their generation what television is to baby boomers. It's always been around. It's hard to imagine a time when it didn't exist. And 40% admit to being addicted to their smartphones. Are you liking how this is unfolding? They are a fascinating group. And who are they now? They're the first group. Our first Generation Z workers are starting into the workplace. Generation Z Millennials, they're in there now. Generation Z, born after 1996, they make up roughly 3% of the workforce. Many are finishing their university degrees and looking to land their first real jobs. They're burdened by student loans, and they face some of the highest unemployment rates that could have long-term consequences on the broader US economy. Do events shape who people are? They absolutely do. Are they job hoppers? Well, Dan can attest from his personal, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Generational turnover costs $30.5 billion annually. That's just dealing with turnover costs. How about this? 60% plan to not be working with their company a year from now. They've already made that decision. Already made the decision that a year from now, I will not be at this company. They have a higher quit rate when dealing with poor management. We're going to talk about what that means. And more than half don't see a future with their current employer. So how about that? You bring them in, they've already, as a group, or in general, planned on the fact that they won't be there a year from now. And if they are there a year from now, they don't really see a future with their employer. If they are they job hopping, you bet they are. And these are some of the reasons why they are. These reasons can be controlled with the right kind of leadership. They don't plan on being with a company a year from now for reasons that are related to that. And let me share some of those. Why the job hopping? Poor management, yeah. Lack of career growth, yeah. Sometimes poor communication, sometimes pay, sometimes lack of recognition. Sometimes they just get a better opportunity. But whatever the reasons happen to be, these are reasons that are manageable. They're hopping because of poor leadership. Sometimes they're hopping because of lack of training or an excessive workload. Sometimes they don't have the tools and the resources, or the lack of collaboration, right? And that word is going to continue, it's going to weave itself through this presentation from now toward the end. So that means that what you're looking at is 55% of these folks are currently disengaged at work, right? Even working remotely, 55% are disengaged at work. So that means that almost more than 5 out of 10 employees that you have in the workplace or working remote aren't giving you their best effort for a lot of these particular reasons. And will they continue to job hop? They most certainly will, until we as leaders find ways to begin to address that. So let me start with a basic premise. All right. One of the things that that's been showing up in research of late in terms of working with this particular population is to think about how do you build on their strengths, not their differences. While they might be a different, diverse, and dynamic workplace, they all bring their unique set of strengths into the workplace. And part of our responsibility is trying to figure out, observe, and allow them to apply those strengths towards solving problems and decision-making that goes on inside of the organization. And according to research, when you use a strength-based approach to team building a diverse team, folks have seen a 19% increase in sales, or some organizations have seen a 29% increase in profits, a higher customer engagement. How about some of the lowest turnover? And low turnover, 60% lower turnover in lower turnover organizations, 72% lower turnover in high turnover organizations. So there is a cost benefit to knowing how to help these individuals use their strengths inside of the organization. We see an increase in terms of employee engagement around 15%. And this is even more critical, 59% fewer safety incidents. Why? Because we find a way to help them use their strengths to help advance the organization, to solve problems, and to continue to keep the organization competitive. Now, here's where here's where we start to make the connect. Here's where we start to make they want, not necessarily what you want, but what do they want in the workplace? Well, every piece of research points to the fact that they want purpose to justify the paycheck. How about that? For a whole generation of us, we were raised to believe that you go to work to earn a paycheck. You go to work, you take a job to get a paycheck. And as long as you are doing that job and helping that organization meet its product or service demands, that's good enough. No one ever asked me what purpose are you going to serve here at General Motors. No one asked me that question. They just say, "You want to work for General Motors?" And I went, "Yeah, I do." And next thing you know, I was on Interstate 69 going to different General Motors plants inside and outside of Indiana. That was my purpose to get on the road to fulfill the corporate education needs of the various GM plants located up and down the Interstate 69 corridor. I didn't know that that was a purpose or not. They also want development beyond job satisfaction. That's going to require a different kind of mindset in terms of working with individuals. Because what does that mean? When they come to work, they want purpose and they want to be developed so that they're not just experiencing how well a job feels, but how the job helps them to excel in their profession. They want coaches who don't boss. All right. I was raised under a boss model. Dan was probably raised up under a boss model. We were all raised up under a boss model. Well, it turns out that a number of these folks said, "You can boss as much as you want. I don't have to take it." Well, I always thought that, as an employee, when the boss said jump, you didn't ask how high. You just stayed up there until he called you back down. This group doesn't behave like that, gang. They want coaches. They don't want bosses. They want conversations that are more frequent than just the annual review. This is a population that requires ongoing feedback, and I'm going to show you some data around that. They want the strengths that overshadow their weaknesses. Remember how a number of you, as you advancing through your career, they'll say, "Well, what are your weaknesses?" And we say, "Well, my weakness is really that I overwork. My weakness is that I really love my job too much, to the point where I can't make the separation from work and life and all that." No. These folks don't want to talk about their weaknesses. They want to know what are their strengths, how do they build their strengths, how they continue to build their strengths, and the development in the areas in which they may be a little deficient, that comes later. And life work, that they like work that's more than just a job. Right? They don't want to just come to a job. They want to come to a purposeful experience. Now, I know some of you are saying, "Lee, that sounds real, that sounds real, pixie dust, streamers float around the universe in search of universal answers to life." No, I'm the last person to come from that particular point of view. I am the person who recognizes that when at some point in time, when folks say, you try to make a separation between your life and your work, well, that separation is almost impossible nowadays. So what does this group want? They want us to know that if they are coming to the job, that they're fulfilling a purpose for both that organization and for themselves. And oftentimes what that will mean, and Dan, I didn't get a chance to put this in the research, but anybody feel free to look it up. When these individuals are making selection decisions about where they want to work, they're also looking at organizations who have commitments beyond the profit, but the purpose of trying to make society better, either through climate change or whatever. But a lot of these folks, they start to look at what organizations are doing beyond just making a profit. Are they serving a purpose that's making a social, environmental, economic difference in the long run? And they make selection decisions based on that. All right. So what does that mean for us? Here's what we've got to figure out. As a leader, your role is to understand your employees' strength and motivate to increase engagement. It's not just about the hiring manager saying, "Okay, you look like you can handle software, so we're bringing you into the IT department." What else? What are the other strengths that individual brings into that department that you can use to increase their engagement from day one. That's a primary consideration with this group. And you got to tap into their sense of purpose. You know, I know oftentimes when we do interviews and assessments and all that, we rarely ask the question, what is your sense of purpose in coming to this organization? We would, you know, Dan, here we go again, you and I. What's your 5-year plan? 5-year plan? I just got here. I have 5 years. I don't know what I'm going to do 5 days from now. I don't have a plan for that. Well, but without plans, individuals still have a purpose. And I think it's okay in an interview to ask those individuals, what do you see as your purpose when if you come into work for this organization? And let them tell you that. And if it does sound like, you know, pie in the sky and pixie dust and streamers and all that, that's okay. They're letting you know where their perspective happens to reside and what's going to keep them engaged and satisfied in the workplace. You got to provide opportunities for growth. It's not a question of just saying, come in and do your job and we'll see what happens. This is a restless group. They can understand this. There's nothing you can throw at them related to technology that they can't master overnight. There's nothing you can throw at them in terms of technology that they can't master overnight. How long did it take me to learn how to type? I don't know. That was a long time ago, and it seems natural now. But this group, I don't even know if they even took typing lessons. I think they just started typing. They just started typing. There's nothing you can throw at them from a technological standpoint. So you have to find other ways to help them grow. You got to challenge their talent. You identify their strengths, you identify their talents, give them the opportunity to use that talent. And understand that, you know, like all of us, starting out on a career or in the middle of the career, whatever, you got to help coach them through the uncertainty. You know, COVID-19 has been one of the biggest uncertainties to affect the entire planet than we've ever seen in history. When we come through this, and we will, when we come through this, this will be, historians will look back at this and say, well, you talk about a global incident that impacted everyone, that created so much uncertainty. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to help individuals work their way through that uncertainty by keeping them focused on the things that you want to accomplish, coaching them along their skills, taking advantage of their strengths and using their input to help drive a lot of what's going on. And then you mentor to their uniqueness. What are those physical, philosophical, emotional dimensions that separates one individual from the next? Keep in mind, when I talked about this group turning 30 now, they all have that in common, but they're also more than 3 million people who are unique. And part of our responsibility is to find that uniqueness. So I want to make sure you all understand, and this is not to be insulting, so please don't take it that way, that you all understand the mentoring relationship. What happens when you decide to take on the responsibility of being engaged in a mentoring relationship? Here's the definition. The mentoring relationship is an outcome based on a trusting bond of reciprocated learning between the wisdom of experience and the willingness to engage. All right. When you enter into a mentoring relationship, you are bringing established wisdom into a relationship with an individual who is willing to learn from that wisdom. So they become, it's an engaged relationship between the willingness to share wisdom and the willingness to receive wisdom. And there are models all the time. There are models for this, and you've seen it all the time. Any of you who ever was an athlete, you know your coach entered a mentoring relationship with you in terms of trying to bring out the best of your skills and your abilities. An orchestra leader with a singer is a mentoring relationship. Someone who has wisdom about what's needed to bring out the best in that individual's ability to sing. I've been a chairperson of the dissertation committee, and the chairperson has a mentoring relationship with that doctoral student. He or she is there to help guide that person through that process to achieve that outcome. Even a drill sergeant and recruits. Now, I've had a number of family members who've been in all branches of the military. And one of the things that they always talked about was trying to get through boot camp and the importance of that drill sergeant and what it was that he taught him or her and its managers and team members. Managers and team members. As a manager, that's a positional title that gives you both discretion and autonomy to carry out to use the resources to achieve the outcomes of the organization. But inherent in that relationship that we never talked about was the expectation to mentor the individuals in your department, on your team, so that they can achieve the best that they can do. All right. So mentoring is the process of using the embodiment of their strengths to improve skills and performance. You're not going to find that written down. You're not going to find that quote written anywhere but right here. So feel free to challenge my credibility and everything around it. But I'm telling you, from over 30 years of being in this stuff, that mentoring is a process of using the embodiment of their strengths to improve their skills and performance. And you can quote me, and I'll go to combat with anybody who tries to who says different. You can quote me. All right, there are skills to mentoring, and here they are. All right, and mentoring, you've got to listen, to understand, and instruct. And while oftentimes folks say, well, listening is a soft skill and everybody knows how to listen. No, they don't. When you are engaged in communication with someone, especially when you're in the role of leader, your primary obligation is to listen and make absolutely certain you understand what that person is bringing or bringing to that relationship or bringing to that particular project, so that once you understand, you can instruct accordingly. You've got to be able to observe, analyze, and focus. Observe the behavior, analyze what you're seeing, and then focus that behavior toward the outcomes that you're trying to get folks to achieve. You've got to provide feedback to correct, all right? You're trying to correct performance and direct that performance at the same time. That feedback cannot happen once a year. You communicate to support and encourage. Now, part of that communication and encouragement, does that mean giving feedback about behavioral deficiencies? Yes, it does. Deficiency to correct, right? Deficiency to correct. You facilitate to act and to act again, right? So again, you're trying to get your team, this group of individuals, this team, this dynamic workforce, to begin to think about the issues in the organization and to engage them towards some kind of problem resolution in which they own the solution and implement the solution based on that ownership. All right, remember, implement the solution based on that ownership. And then you want to inspire to elevate and educate. And some of you say, well, I'm not an inspiring person. The hell you aren't. Yes, you are. The mere fact that you even stepped into that role is inspiring. You know, the mere fact that you've taken on those challenges is inspiring. The mere fact that you've learned, you've blown up a lot of landmines on the way to being successful. Well, that's called education, right? And that's the wisdom that this group needs most from you. Now, the organizational landscape is lined with all kinds of things. And you know, I think when you get to a certain point where you're able to move through it, use your wisdom, you survive and continue to move forward, that says a lot about you. And that means that you have a lot to give to this group because they needed so much from you. So let the mentoring begin. How does a lot of this begin to happen? Well, there's the direct one-on-one mentoring, and that's a formal or informal singular relationship between the mentor and the mentee. It is by far the most common. I'm sure that Dan can share with you examples of individuals they know that, you know, he runs the Livonia Chamber. That's something they're interested in knowing how to do. So they seek him out and they ask the question, But there's also the formal mentoring that happens inside of an organization where an individual is assigned to another seasoned person who's responsible for bringing that individual along. All right. And so with that, the one-on-one mentoring is, it's an engaged relationship that doesn't really have, it has a unique timeline. Sometimes it's only for 6 weeks. Sometimes it could be for 6 years. Sometimes it's across a lifetime. We don't know. People move in and out of the mentoring relationship as well. Individuals that I mentored 10 years ago who've since gone on to do other things who I've heard and haven't heard from. Interestingly enough, I start to hear from them again now. And they still talk about, well, you remember, you're still my mentor. I haven't talked to you in 10 years. Well, that's okay, because that, now we're reestablishing the relationship. It is the most common, it's the most personal, and clearly it's the one that, in which a lot of us know a lot about. Now, there is the reverse mentoring. And before Dan brought all of you on, he made reference to our good friend Laura, who's probably hanging out in the background somewhere waiting for something to explode. And fortunately, nothing has. But in the reverse mentoring, here's what happens. A junior team member enters into professional friendship with someone more senior, and they exchange skills, knowledge, and understanding. So as Laura sits in the background, making sure that the technology doesn't explode, she also has a set of skills as a junior member of Dan's team, with whom she can share that skill and that knowledge with someone who's more senior. So it becomes this interesting exchange of mentoring. It's not equal, but it's more skill exchange. And think of it as some of you are way too young, but those of you who remember as a kid, when you knew how to program a VCR a lot faster than your dad did. All right, and so you got frustrated with trying to show this individual how to do this, but in time, that was a reverse mentoring. In time, you had to show them how to do that. And for those of you who don't know what a VCR is, I'm just sorry, go look it up.
If I may interject, I bet you none of the
go Google it.
go. Gen Z has no clue what a VCR is. No clue.
And then, of course, there's peer mentoring. That's where individuals, share similar roles and experiences, and they learn from each other. And that's been the way of social media technology for quite a while now, where individuals create their own learning groups where they exchange information, they share how to do something. It's like try to learn how to use Skype for the first time. So a group of you who know how to use Skype get together and show others how to use it. Or one of the things that we used to have a lot of fun with, Dan, back in the days when we could meet live, is that we used to have this exercise where we'd ask folks to take out their cell phones, and a group at the table take out their cell phones, find an app that no one else has on their cell phone, and show them how to use that. And then in the end, what we found is that individuals learned a lot more from each other from that peer relationship exchange of apps than they could have, Googling it and all that. So those forms of mentoring are out there, and as a leader, you have access to all of them. You have access to the one-on-one mentoring, which you'll probably spend a lot of time doing. But but here's something that's being introduced now. Don't be afraid to use the reverse mentoring. If you have team members who know something that you don't, who know how to do something that you don't know how to do, but you need it done within that team and among others, feel free to structure and engage that relationship too. And by all means, let them share information with each other. All right, keep the transparency open in your organization, because you never know how these individuals, what it is they've learned, and how they can help improve the competitive position in your organization. Because here's something, they love to communicate. That's just verbal communication complete with feedback. They love it, they need it, they crave it. So we have we how to give feedback, informal feedback, on a continuous basis. The video on the cell, we know it as a cell phone. I think it's their walking video camera, because they tape everything. They move beyond anything that's worth seeing. They will put it in their cell phone. They text short comments to provide direction or support when you're working with them. If they, if they use a text, then use the text. When you give an email with a purpose and expect a reply. And then don't be reluctant to have facilitated discussion with peer groups. And with a lot of the divide that's starting to go on within the country, I think the notion of facilitated dialogue is going to be a crucial skill back in the workplace, because all of us know that when people come to work, they do not leave their personal life outside the gate. They don't leave it in the elevator. They don't leave it in the car. They bring it with them. They bring what they think, what they believe, how they want to act, and all that. And facilitated dialogue is going to be critical to ensuring that we can still maintain our productivity levels in the exchange of perspectives. Some quick research information. So a recent Harvard study suggests that this generation, they opt to text to avoid feeling awkward. All right, so rather than engage in a one-to-one face-to-face conversation, I'll just send you a text. That way I don't have that social awkwardness operating for me. They opt to text to hide from contact. So video is fine, but they don't want the physical face-to-face contact. Or they opt to text because it's expedient. And and when we were back in the workplace, Dan and I remember working in a cubicle environment, where oftentimes we would send an email to the person sitting behind us to see what time they want to go to lunch. All right, why? Because we thought it was expedient, and it wasn't. All you have to do is turn around and ask the question. They opt to text because it is perceived as substance, that a text conversation is a substantive conversation, and nothing can be further from the truth. So you want to have some fun with your mentee, call your mentee from time to time. They will enjoy hearing from you. They really will. Call them from time to time. Say, why don't you send me a text? I want to talk with you. Answer the phone. One of the things that my wife and I had to learn since our son moved back home from Western Michigan, because he was one of those folks that if we called him, he never answered the phone, but if we sent him a text, he picked it up the next moment. I would say, why didn't you answer the phone? Well, I didn't want to. I thought a text. So I say, insist on a phone call. It won't scare them that much. So I say, well, I'll send you a text. No, I want you to call me. But just call me. Just call me. I want to talk with you. And they love to collaborate, and you need to know why. They have been collaborating since preschool. Collaboration is what they know. Getting team members to work toward a common goal. They've been doing this in preschools because it involves knowledge sharing, which they've been taught how to do. Cooperation, which they've been taught how to do. Problem solving, unified decisions, it creates ownership, expedites implementation. They already know how to do this, ladies and gentlemen. They've been doing this since preschool. That's what they know. Now, it doesn't come at the cost of their individualism. Don't confuse the two, because they are unique individuals who bring skills and talents to the workplace. But they already know how to collaborate. So why fight them on that? In fact, take that strength and use that to strengthen that team and to strengthen the culture in that organization. You don't have to teach them how to do that. What you have to do is encourage them to continue doing that. And here's one of the reasons why. I grew up under this notion of the pit bull approach to advancing in the organization. And what that was, if you're trying to pit one against the other in a competitive run to find the alpha dog in the group, it's just going to result in high turnover. So if you're of a mindset, if you grew up under the mindset where the best way to determine who's going to be the best leader of this team is to pit them against one another in some kind of competitive runoff, all you're going to do is add to your turnover problems, because that's not their mindset. That's not where they're going. So we have to begin to re-examine our own approaches to leadership, and moving from this traditional approach that a lot of us grew up under to a non-traditional approach. And I'll just highlight a few of these things because I know we're starting to get low on time. But just to highlight a couple of things, employees should be seen, not heard. No, that's not going to work, because you're going to hear them. If you don't hear them in the workplace, you'll hear them as they're leaving your workplace. So get their input to increase their engagement. How about this one? Dan and I both know about this one. If you don't hear from me, all is well. No. Feedback is a continuous loop with this group. And annual reviews once a year just won't cut it, because by the time the year rolls around to give them the review, they've already left. So there's no, and that's the ultimate review. The ultimate review is when the time comes to give the review, they aren't there to give it. They aren't there to get it. Information is abundant, and this sink or swim, forget it. That's not gonna hold them in the workplace. Recognize you're gonna have to teach them how to swim. Mistakes used to be fireable, and that's happened to me a couple of times in life. Mistakes are for learning. They're not fireable. You know, if the building didn't fall down, it's not that big a mistake. And you help individuals learn from that mistake to move forward. And the career investment is based on accomplishment, not just based on loyalty. So in order to mentor this generation, we have to rethink our approach to leadership. And so you got to lead like you mean it. You got to model the leadership you want to see from them. If you want to see them facilitative, then be facilitative. You got to coach to improve their strengths, not admonish their weaknesses. Make sure you communicate clearly and directly with this group. Assign tasks that are going to develop their skills, not just to keep them busy, because they recognize that. Encourage their input. I know sometimes it can be, here's more information coming at me, but that input leads to engagement. That engagement leads to higher productivity and profit. And use questions to challenge their thinking. Use open-ended questions to challenge their thinking. Well, help me understand how you came to that conclusion. What do you think are some of the issues that are going on with that? What do you recommend as a way to solve that? So that they can talk and engage with you to solve problems. And mistakes are only catastrophic if you say they are. If you say this is a catastrophic mistake, it's a catastrophic mistake. If it's a learning mistake, then it's a learning mistake, and here's how we fix it. All right. As Dan indicated earlier, we are not in a position where we can tolerate a lot of high turnover just because we don't understand the group that's currently coming to workforce and who will be our dominant workforce in the years ahead. So understand their uniqueness is their strength as a generation, their strength as a workforce, their strength as an educated body, as a diverse experienced group, as lightning thumbs communicators. Well, they get some of the strongest thumbs I've ever seen in my life. As a casual fashion statement, and as a social media juggernaut. All right, and this is who they are, gang. This is who they are. These folks who have turned 30, have been turning 30 all year. This is what they represent. For the Zers who are coming into the workplace, this is what they represent. So here's a quote. It's well documented that those who are mentored outperform and out-earn those who are not. They get promoted more often and report lower burnout rates. That's the most recent issue of Forbes, July 2020. So that's hot off the press, hot off the research. All right, it's there. It's there for you to take advantage of. Now, I only got a couple of minutes, so I'll just show this. One of the debates that we oftentimes get into is whether or not an organization should have a formal mentoring program, or should they just leave it informal? And there's arguments on both sides of the fence. I'll give you a couple of key points. If you're gonna have a formal mentoring program, it does create a learning culture. It does promote personal and professional development, and maybe decreases some stress and anxiety. The issue oftentimes is the mentors who are assigned to mentees. Unfortunately, the results are mixed on that, in that sometimes they work well, sometimes they don't work well under a formal learning environment. But we do know that at times it will come full circle, that if it works well, the individual that you were mentoring becomes someone who mentors someone else later on in the organization. And then there are those who say, just keep it informal. It's a natural organic chemistry between two people. As someone who has been privileged and honored to mentor any number of folks, oftentimes sought the mentor and flexible in terms of his timeline. It's mutual as opposed to forced. All right. And the formal program is a little more forced than it is mutual. It's not dependent on the formal program, and you can mentor any area of your life, and it's a win-win. All right. If you're currently thinking about putting together a formal mentoring program, there's some strong sides to it. If you want to keep it informal, there's also some strong sides to that. So here's my final perspective on things, because I know, Dan, because we're winding down. I just think that if the goal is to get the best thinking about a product, service, or process, then the strategy for success is to be inclusive of all the talent available in order to address a globally competitive marketplace. That's what this group knows more than the generations that preceded it. A globally competitive marketplace that requires a different kind of mindset, a different way of thinking. And I hope you all understand that I'm not just putting the onus of responsibility on this generation. I'm saying that in order to tap into that generation, there's a responsibility that comes to us as well. So here they are. And my parting question to all of you, as you continue to work your way through this, is, given the fact that they're generational, dynamic, young, and diverse, here's your question: who can you afford to exclude? Who can you afford to exclude? The answer should be no one. The answer should be no one, because they all bring their own unique talents and skills. And ladies and gentlemen, they want to use those talents and skills in your workplace. Get out of the way, direct them, facilitate them, but get out of the way and let them show you what they can do. Okay, Dan, I think we're at Q&A time or wind down time. So I will, how about I close the screen and see if there's anything else that we need to discuss or talk about, any kinds of questions or anything like that that are going on.
I got a few for you, Lee, here. First of all, outstanding as usual. Thank you. Great stuff. And the one word that jumped out at me is coach.
Yeah.
It is coach. It is coach. It is coach. And to have that mindset, and there's a lot of athletes out there, and the coach relationship is different from the traditional boss model mindset.
Exactly. Yep.
Our good friend Vaughn Wynn had a question.
Hey, Vaughn.
And she said, how does a millennial pursue or ask for a sponsor or mentor?
How does a millennial pursue or ask for a sponsor or mentor?
How do you pursue getting a mentor? Like you think somebody's there. How do you go about that?
Oh, I think it's the informal meet and ask. The pattern that I've seen unfold in terms of my own personal experience is someone will contact me and say, can we have a conversation? And typically when they do that, it's because they've seen something about who you are or what you do that connects with something they're trying to do. And so oftentimes the discomfort comes in trying to make an arrangement to have a conversation about that, because the thing that concerns them most is that they're asking a question, but you may say no. So I think it's important for individuals to see you as someone who's open to being a mentor, and that you have certain skills that you can offer them. But I encourage folks on LinkedIn, if they contact me, just contact me and ask the question. All right. And even if it turns out that I can't be a mentor for you, I might know someone who can. But just start with the ask. Encourage folks. Let them know that we're not ogres. We're not traditional bosses who say, don't bring anything to me unless it's about so and so and so and so. Let individuals know, if you want mentoring, you got to seek out the person and ask the question.
And she talked about, actually, she had a follow-up question about sponsoring. Like, there's a difference between mentoring and sponsoring. How do you get somebody to sponsor you?
Okay, so I think that part of getting someone to sponsor you is to let them know who you are and what it is you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. All right, and I'll use you and I as an example. Mm-hmm. All right, in our experiences together, as president of the NAAA, it's our state of Michigan chapter, I had to have sponsors in order to put on events and all that. And so when I seek out someone, what I'm letting that individual know is, this is who we are, this is what we represent, and are you interested in possibly being a sponsor given what you know about us? So sponsorship really is about someone seeing something that they can connect with you, and it essentially means that they're not necessarily having a formal ongoing relationship, but an understanding. They're an ally in many ways. They're an ally who, when you need something, because you share that common interest, they're willing to sponsor that common interest.
One thing that jumped out at me is you were discussing the experience of someone born since 1990, today's millennial, and then going into Generation Z. You know, the whole concept of school is not a safe haven,
Right.
is a very powerful concept to comprehend. But I think one thing that is inherent in a lot of people, not just millennials, but a lot of people, is people are anxious. I
Yeah.
think this year is put it on steroids, put anxiety on steroids. So the whole boss model was suck it up and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you highlighted that won't work. How
Yeah.
does a coaching leader effectively respond to an anxious but talented employee?
Um, you said an ancient, but what?
An anxious you
Oh,
have a
anxious.
talented
Yeah.
employee. Again,
No, no. You know
about how
what?
to play to their strengths, but
Yeah.
realizing that there's anxiety.
I think, no, but I think you acknowledge the context in which they're operating. If they're saying, I'm feeling anxious, well, yeah, so am I, and here's why. We're feeling the same level of anxiety, but here's how you can best think about or begin to cope with that anxiety. All right. We don't dismiss it because it's too real. Um, if you get a chance, Dan, get in touch with some mental health professionals to do a presentation for this group, and they will tell you how mental health is going off the charts because of this. Well, you don't kick that under the rug. If someone brings that to you, you acknowledge it as its truth. You encourage them in terms of trying to work through it, but you make sure they understand that you are not alone in what you're feeling. What you have to consider now is, now that you know that, how do you keep that from dismanaging or mismanaging your own behavior? And from that standpoint, that's where folks like you and I and my friend Lonnie Johnson and all others who are tuning in, Van, that's how we help them. We help them by making sure that we don't dismiss it, we acknowledge it and say, here's how you direct it.
So great. And for those of you who've seen Brené Brown's special on Netflix, she talks about sharing each other's vulnerabilities.
Yes,
And you
good one.
connect with people. You
Good.
have anxiety, I have it too. Just being
Yes.
honest like
Yes.
that allows you to connect with anyone, let alone somebody you work with.
Yes, and folks understand when you say I have it too, it's not one of those, well, you think you got it bad, I got it bad too. No, you're not using this to wallow into a pit of anxiety. You're acknowledging the fact that it exists, that you understand it, that you feel it, but here's how we work our way out of that pit. Get out of the pit. Get out of it.
And I think you kind of hit on this when you talked about we as mentors should always call people, just don't rely on the text or social media context.
Yeah.
Led to the question, how does a manager better engage with the staff if you're stuck in a remote or virtual work environment?
I still say pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right. Yeah, we're doing this Zoom thing now, so they know you're out there. But I think it's okay to say to them, but you know what? Dan, I'm going to call. Let's find some time to talk later this week on the phone. And I might throw them off. Say, you want to Zoom? No, I want to talk to you on the phone. So let's find time to do that this week. I think you're going to find that those supposedly kind of soft, informal activities are going to get you major gains in terms of minimizing anxiety and keeping your workforce engaged. Call them. Just call them. And then make them answer the phone and talk to you.
So we got a few questions from people asking if you'll be able to share the slides. Are we able to do that?
Oh yeah. In fact, here's what you can do. If you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, go ahead and do that. Let me know you were at this particular workshop. In fact, I'll give you my email address, but I'd like to make sure that I'm giving it to folks who are here.
Yeah.
So my email address is Lee Meadows. That's just the one E. If you send it to LEE, it's going to go to another guy. He's going to get all the credit. So it's Lee Meadows at Comcast.net. All right, Comcast.net. But
And
also hit me on LinkedIn so I know it was you.
And also, could you share your Twitter and LinkedIn handles as well for those?
Well, Twitter is Doc Meadows. Doc Meadows at Twitter, and my LinkedIn is Lee Meadows at Meadows Consulting.
Okay. And by the way, for everyone else, not only will you have now a way to connect with Lee for his slides, we will have a copy of this presentation available to everybody who participated today.
Yeah.
Lee threw a lot of information at us, and there may be 2 or 3 things you may want to review in the program. So
Yes.
I know I do too. I got a bunch of written notes here myself. So.
Well, I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but I love my folks at the Livonia Chamber. So if I overindulge with too much information, know it's done from a loving place.
And Lee, we appreciate it. We talk about it, it's just not your workforce, it's diversity, inclusion. It's just a matter of connecting with people. And when we're able to be in a more of an understanding or respectful of each other's talents and concerns, we connect with people. And that's basically a lot of what I take out of your coaching model here throughout the mentoring model. And, you said mentoring is the process of using the embodiment of their strengths and improved skills and performance. And that, to me, is ultimately what makes any organization stronger, really, if you're able to exercise that.
Well, I'm speaking from a value place, so that's why I said that's a Lee Meadows quote. You're not going to find it anywhere. So hopefully it's helpful.
Well, Lee, we thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your continued friendship and your mentoring to us today. We appreciate that. And we are very much thankful to Schoolcraft College for sponsoring the program today. And we had a pretty good turnout of people with this. I think there's a lot to be gained from this. We can all get better from it. So thank you, Lee. Well,
let me acknowledge my friend Dan at Schoolcraft. And Dan it's always, I miss having coffee with you, buddy.
Well, hopefully it'll happen soon enough here. Hopefully this vaccine news is a light at the end of the tunnel here. So
yeah, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. Everybody stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thanks, Lee. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you soon, man.
You can count on it. Take care now.
Yeah, very good.
Bye now.
Bye.